You should never be at home. This 58-year-old NYU professor went viral for telling young folks that they need to be out of the house for success, but his advice got blasted. Professor Scott Galloway made some statements and that are highlighted in this article that we're going to go over today, continuing the interesting debate about the future of remote work. I will tell you that this article, the author of this article, definitely leans towards being pro remote work and is very the bias there is very evident in the article as we read. Very, very interesting information as far as is the constant discussion with remote work a generational thing or a control thing, or is it really the future of employment? Let's just jump right into it and see. Professor Scott Galloway of New York University is used to being the man that calls out the dinosaurs and pushes for new ways of thinking. But when Galloway spoke recently at the Wall Street Journal's CEO Council Summit, he sounded downright Jurassic. When he said of remote work, you should never be at home. That's what I always tell young people. Home is for 7 hours of sleep, and that's it. You need to be out of the house. So we see the bias there, calling this person Jurassic for their point of view. A little bit of bias there. That's okay. That's what I always tell young people. Home is for 7 hours of sleep, and that's it. You need to be out of the house. And then they say, as if the pandemic never happened, right? Galloway, who teaches marketing and co-hosts the popular Pivot podcast, believes the amount of time spent at home is inversely correlated with success professionally and romantically. Yet his recent comments since going viral have reignited the debate over remote work, its social impact, and whether older generations, Galloway, who's 58, are out of touch with the challenges and choices of Gen Z. I completely understand Galloway's point of view on this and his position. His position mimics and mirrors many leaders' positions on this. Success professionally and romantically are inversely correlated with the amount of time spent at home. There's a lot of people that view it this way. There's a lot of people that view in your younger years, or your years to get out and work and break your back, basically, and not in the most lightest sense that term could possibly be. You should be out there hustling, essentially, is what they believe and what is told, and then so that way in your older years you don't have to do that. Which even this person says, the Galloway fallout says, to be certain, Galloway has some fair points. Relationships are the currency of a successful career. According to the professor's comments on his podcast and media appearances, he's also expressed concerns about the rise in loneliness and decline in mental health for young people. Yet mental decline can be just as attributable to stress from micromanagement in the office, for example. Meanwhile, Professor Galloway's comments went viral on TikTok. Younger users on the platform pushed back on the professor's comments, focusing on the economic climate and costs associated with commuting. This is total BS, said one user. Hustle culture with a sprinkle of consumerism. Other comments discuss the high cost of rent and shelter to justify staying at home, or the expenses associated with traveling and eating while going into the office. You step out of the house and spend $100, said one user. So obviously, in those higher cost areas of where people are living, it costs more money to be there. As far as eating and stuff like that, you could always pack a lunch. I don't know. I'm not trying to take any sides on this. I'm trying to be completely neutral in this conversation because my thoughts on this are essentially one that's kind of in the middle, because I see both sides and I understand it. And that might be just because of the generation that even I'm a part of, being millennial. But, I've always understood that if you were going to go out and make a better way of life and a better way of living, that you have to get out there and you have to hustle. And I think a lot of people are turned off by that hustle mindset. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from. However, saying that working from home or working remotely is not part of that hustle mindset is very, very one-sided. Very, very one-sided. I understand that there's been a massive rise in mental health, but there's so many other factors that have been played out in these past couple years. For instance, most of the population just got done going through a pandemic where they were worried that everybody was going to die and they were going to lose their loved ones and their family, and they're never going to be able to see them again. And then we're continuing to struggle with that now, with all the data coming out around the after effects of all those things, including people who chose to get medical or take medical advice and get certain types of, preventative measures, injected into their bodies that may have not been the best advice. As more and more stuff comes out, things like that, might be causing the mental health decreases and declines and all this kind of stuff. And it can't solely be linked to people being stuck at home, even though there is data to show that being stuck at home does cause that. But does that mean you're supposed to be at work? Or is there just going to be a rise in social activities to compensate and to counterbalance? Because I've never felt connected at my job, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that would feel that way too. You don't normally hang out with the people that you're around, and you don't build community with them. Very few companies have that. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. But the cost of housing was another key factor for many in the comment section. If I'm paying more than a quarter of monthly rent, I'm enjoying my space, one said. All this moved BuzzFeed staff writer Krista Torres to observe, I have never seen Gen Z and millennials come together so heated. Others pointed out that online dating meant workers didn't need to get out to find relationships, and that the proximity to family and pets was better for happiness and life satisfaction, even if it dragged their careers. So there's a couple different things. You have a value system that's consistently changing, and you can argue all day about whether or not that value system is a worthwhile one or one that's worthy in your mind. But the value system essentially is that people want to go to work, but they also want to have lives outside of work. And I know that when you're younger, that's kind of your years to get out there and kind of hustle and find your way. And then as you're older, you can, kind of have more time, more free time and all this kind of stuff. That's the idea behind it. And I think that's the idea, maybe essentially, because I haven't actually read the comments, but maybe that's where Galloway is coming from, that thought process. So I see both sides. One main thing that I see in the business sector, though, is that if this trend continues, and this is truly and honestly what the new generation is valued at, or this is how they view work, then ultimately what may happen as the trend continues, as we keep pushing into these next generations, is that companies will have to compensate and basically bow down in some way, shape, or form. Change their mindsets, change their schedules in order to attract new talent. I mean, that will eventually happen. Right now, you're kind of still in that day and age where it's up in the air. You got guys like me in the work sector that would like to have more freedom to work at home and yada yada yada, but understand when companies are like, no, we're not going to do that, and we'll still take jobs in that way. Guys like me, though, may slowly be exiting or disappearing in the workforce as new workforce aged potential employees enter in, and their value systems are completely different. And if your company is going to continue to attract talent, that might be one of the things you have to think about. That's just my thoughts on it, and that takes out any kind of like morality or moral standing in that. It's like, look, this is just the reality you live in, being a company in the United States. However, there have been discussions about if we are going to go to more of a remote option, and we are going to go to more of a, hey, you're going to work from home and we're never going to see you. And if that's really what someone wants to do, well, then the employment pool broadens dramatically. And what I mean by that is, like, now companies can hire other employees in other states. I've seen that a lot, where there will be a state. I've seen jobs posted for a position in Alabama, and but it's posted as willing to hire someone in California. So that's how far away and disassociated with the position you could be. I've seen that actually in job listing sites like Indeed. And so if that is the case, and you're going to see that here, you may have to really fight harder to try and stand out, especially in a remote age. Good luck. I mean, I've experienced the hustle of trying to find a job in this remote age, and it's a much different grind than it used to be, where I would just walk into a company and say, hey, my name's Peter, here's my blah blah blah, are you hiring? It doesn't work like that anymore. But here, this is an interesting section here. Despite the pushback from younger workers, the older business leaders seem keen on getting workers back into the office. J.P. Morgan, Citibank, and Goldman Sachs have all called employees back to work in recent months, while even tech companies like Snap and Tesla have clamped down on remote work. Tesla CEO Elon Musk went as far as to call remote work morally wrong, though Musk offered no factual evidence to back up that assertion. Once again, we see the bias kind of leaking through. I don't agree with Elon Musk that remote work was morally wrong. I think that this is just a viewpoint, and I also think it just was just a bad take. It was a bad take for someone who is engaging in remote work himself, being the leader of multiple companies and not being able to be in two places at once. So it was a bad take. More than half, 58% of Americans work from home at least once per week, according to research by McKinsey. By 2025, 36.2 million Americans may be clocking in from the comfort of their home, says Upwork. So workers report feeling happier, more satisfied, and more productive while working from home. However, one study found that remote employees may have slower career progression because they were less likely to receive feedback. The paper was put together by economists from Harvard, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and the University of Iowa last month. To balance outcomes, research from Stanford University suggests a hybrid work environment, coming into the office a few days a week while working from home the rest of the time, could help employees make relationships and advance their career without having to give up the flexibility of remote work. The organizations that I've worked for, the organizations that I'm currently working for, have adopted this kind of model, the hybrid model, because it just comes down to it for what's best for the organization. There's some things that being in person we've found to be just a complete and total necessity. Like, it has to happen. You have to be in person to talk about certain things, to discuss certain things, to do work together. There's just some things that being in person help. This is where I believe personally where this is going. I think we're going to see a lot more hybrid stuff popping up. I think we're going to see a lot more companies engaging in different practices, such as having an early day off or even just a 4-day work week, things like that for the types of companies that cannot have remote work. Really what comes down to it is people like Elon Musk can sit there and preach all day about how they feel like something is morally wrong, but at the end of the day, if they can't gain or attract employees, they're not going to get very far. And I think that even happened with Elon Musk with his takeover of Twitter. I think he tried to initially pull people back to a permanent in-person work schedule. I don't know. I can't remember where I heard this from, and I can't confirm this, so look it up to be sure. But I'm pretty sure he tried to do that, and it didn't go so well, and they wound up changing their stance on it, and they wound up engaging in more of a hybrid model once again, because most of the employees started just exiting the organization en masse. I think that's what happened. I can't remember for sure. Now, he has let go of a lot of people, but he did have to change that stance. So now that he's let go of a lot of people, I think they said about 80% or close to 80%, the company's structure may change completely, but even he had to bend a knee initially in order to stave off a mass exodus from his organization. And so these other organizations right now have the ability to make such demands, but as the culture changes, as you have new employees change, that's what I'm saying, eventually they may not have that ability, and they may wind up having to figure out a hybrid model or some sort of way to justify or vindicate the fact that they need staff, but the staff needs stuff from them as well. I mean, they are not moral arbiters. Companies are never moral arbiters, because the only thing companies are worried about is profitability. So what happens and what makes these people look like hypocrites most of the time is when they stand up and try to be moral arbiters, but they're engaged in a work culture that there is no room for being moral arbiters. It's about profit and finance, and it's about making money. Now, obviously there's certain things business-wise that are always going to be right or wrong, and you have to be able to take a stance there. But on things that are not really fleshed out a lot, things that don't really have a clear understanding, such as, remote work and your thoughts and feelings on remote work, there's no room to be that moral arbiter, because you are subject to what talent pool you're pulling from, and the willingness to do what you're asking those people to do, and that will always change. For instance, if they can't find the right talent, because the right talent demands some sort of remote work hybrid, they will change it because they need the right talent. And that's what it comes down to. It's the same thing, because companies attract employees the same way they attract customers. There's a negotiated contract there, and they need to negotiate something that's suitable for both parties in order to engage in that contractual agreement. And they do a certain type of work for them for the exchange of pay. And it's the same thing. It's a customer relationship, is a contractual agreement as well. The customer will come and shop there if they get XYZ for their money. So that's my thoughts on it. A really interesting article. Obviously, the debate continues. What do you guys think in the comment section below? Do you think Galloway's comments were not appropriate, or do you think people's response to them is as to be expected? Where do you side on this with remote work? Do you think it's even a possibility in the future? It's very, very interesting. It's very, very it's a very, very heated debate. All the videos I've done talking about it so far have really generated and sparked some heated debate. So I'm really interested to hear in the comment section below what you guys are thinking. Please take the time to like the video, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps in the algorithm. Really excited for the growth here. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in and staying this far, and I will catch you guys in the next one.